Hey, this is Nicole Kelly, host of Loud and Proud. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Annie Scogan, and I'm one of the co-hosts of Head Over Heels Pageant Talk here on Public House Media. Thank you for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come out and check my show, Head Over Heels Pageant Talk, where we talk about all things involved with the Miss America organization and both myself and my other co-host Jordan Butler's experiences within it. A new show comes out bi-monthly, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so that you never miss an episode of Head Over Heels Pageant Talk. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Hollywood Happy Place. I'm Gerry Strauss, and thank you so much for tuning in this week. We have a special, kind of a unique episode this week. So I'm going to tell you right off the bat, we don't have an interview. It's just me flying solo, and this is, quite honestly, quite transparently, due to some scheduling issues, but it's also, to me, kind of a great time to take a little bit of a break and talk directly to you guys who've been checking out our episodes so far, and we've had such wonderful feedback and such wonderful activity. Everywhere we are, we're on iTunes, the Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Play, we're on the iHeartRadio network, Spreaker, etc., etc., etc. Of course, all of this thanks to our good friends, our team, Public House Media. Of course, you can check them at thephmedia.com. Just such a great, just a great family for our podcast to be a part of. They've been so helpful, so supportive, and they and you guys are really the ones who are driving this thing and making it happen. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you so far. We've been having a lot of fun catching up with a lot of names that are a lot of your favorites, certainly a lot of my favorites, from music, from TV, from movies, from the past, from the present. I tend to reach back a lot to the 90s because that was sort of my high school, college heyday. And as I've said on this show before, my belief is that those are the years where a lot of us form what our favorite stuff is going to be for our lives, because that's the time when we're grown up enough to really appreciate things to an extent, but we also have a little more expendable time in order to do so. We don't yet necessarily have families and kids and wives and careers, so we've got time to, listen to those full albums. We've got time to go to the movies a lot. We've got time to, watch a lot of TV. At least for me, that's my experience. Those were the times when I was just kind of a bit of a couch potato, a bit of a music head, so to speak. Now I just kind of ride off the coattails of the preferences that I formed back then. So I like a lot of the same stuff and the same people now that I do then, and I think a lot of you do as well. That's why so many of those great stars from the 90s are still relevant today, whether in new projects or new careers, or maybe even in reboots or returns of some of our favorite shows from those days. So it's a great time to be us, right, people? So what I wanted to do here, and this is an idea I got from one of the very first podcasts that I enjoyed and got me into just sort of that mode of listening to a lot of podcasts. I'm a pro wrestling fan my whole life, and I am involved to an extent in that wrestling business. So I'm sure that at least some of you out there have followed me and followed my name through my work with promotions like Northeast Wrestling and some of the others I've been lucky enough to be involved in. We're going to have some wrestling guests here and there on this show as time goes on as well. But one of the guys who really blew up in podcasting in the pro wrestling discussion genre is a great performer, great wrestler in his own right, named Colt Cabana. His podcast, The Art of Wrestling, has really set the standard in a lot of ways, not just for wrestling-related podcasts, but podcasts in general. So he does a thing actually annually. I just listened to his most recent one a couple days ago, where instead of doing an interview, which is what he does the other 51 days of the year, he just sits down and talks to his audience, his fans, his listeners, and he talks about all the episodes he's done, all the people he's interviewed over that past year, and he just kind of reviews them and shares little tidbits or stories if they come up. Almost like a director's cut is how he calls it, a behind-the-scenes sort of look at what went into those interviews that were so enjoyable. So I know that every interview I've been able to do, and I've been lucky enough to do, has been enjoyable for me. Hopefully it has been for you guys as well. And just for the background, for those of you new to the game, a lot of you have also followed me through a lot of my writing work. I've been interviewing various forms of celebrity for many years in magazines, for websites, etc., etc. So this podcast is really just the latest outlet and the latest iteration to allow me the freedom to use that experience and use those connections to bring those names to you in a listenable form. So I'm just going to kind of do an overview. If you go to Apple Podcasts, if you go to Google Play or iHeartRadio or wherever this podcast is, you're going to see all of the podcasts that have been archived so far. Now, the first batch that we had uploaded were actually something that I basically threw in there from a prior podcast project that I tried to kickstart a few years ago. We called it Stuck in the 90s, or Down with the 90s, I'm sorry. And it was basically what we do now, but more focused on a lot of the names that we remember from that time period. So some of these interviews are from there. And I'm just going to kind of run down and just, give you an idea. For those who haven't checked out the archives, maybe you will want to go download a few of these episodes. And please make sure you subscribe wherever you prefer to get your podcast, because we certainly appreciate you making that free, no-cost commitment. And in return, you get all the episodes that we put out as soon as they're available. So you don't have to think about it, don't have to worry about it. It's really convenient for everyone. So if you do that, show your support. Super cool. Appreciate it. So, just looking down the list of some of the people we talked to, and some of these names, maybe we could jog your memory of who they are. Going from the oldest, and again, this is back from a few years ago, I had an opportunity to talk to Karen Parsons from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Karen played the older sister, the snobby older sister, Hillary. In reality, could not be nicer, could not be cooler. And a really interesting story, because Karen is now behind the nonprofit known as Sweet Blackberry, which is something that she created, she brainstormed, and it creates content, whether video content or books, whatever the case may be, that teaches children about unsung African-American heroes. So it's a really important cause to her and to a lot of her famous friends. She does a lot of crowdfunding involving prizes with, among other people, her Fresh Prince cohorts, including Will Smith. So definitely great to chat with her, and we are going to have her, excuse me, we're going to have her on the show again pretty soon. And that's going to be a recurring theme. A lot of these older interviews, I've reached back out to some of these people, and I'd like to bring them back and have an updated conversation and see what's going on. Somebody else we'll be talking to really soon, Christina Lease, who you're going to remember either from Child's Play 2 or her role of Emily Valentine on the original Beverly Hills 90210. She was a bad girl that Brandon got involved with. Why was she bad? Well, she wore a leather jacket. Clearly, she was a bad girl. Again, couldn't be nicer, very artsy, very knowledgeable about film. She's a film curator and a buff, and a foodie, and she's very artistically inclined in a lot of directions and a lot of ways you wouldn't believe. So can't wait to catch up with her again and see what else she's gotten her claws into. One of my favorite guests from back in the day, I'm a sucker for 90s teen movies, and Nikki Bilderback has been in a few. She's been in Clueless, she's been in Can't Hardly Wait, and she's been in some others as well. You'll remember her face, but she's definitely one of those familiar young ladies, still young lady, that you just hear her talk and you can feel that charisma, why she's been around for so long. Sorry about that. I'm not used to talking all by myself. I'm a big nerd for Saved by the Bell, and I pride myself on the knowledge of the show that I bring to the table. Kirsten Kemp Becker, she played, what was her name? Rhonda Robustelli, who is like the big kind of, we'll say, aggressive young lady who at times pursued Zach Morris's affections. So it was cool to catch up with her as well. Lots of fun checking in with where she's gone in the real estate world, etc., etc. And hopefully we can talk to her again soon as well. Melora Hardin. She's been in a lot. She was in Lambada, but what I know her best for is one of my favorite shows of all time, The Office, where she played Jan Levinson, a very unique, very hardcore character. But she's a very talented lady, a singer, a dancer. She really does do it all. So it was great to kind of get a better sense of Melora, not just as Jan, but as an entertainer in general. I'm a big Kevin Smith guy. I'm from Jersey, and I grew up in the 90s. Enough said. Clerks Marilyn Gigliotti. She was the girlfriend of Dante, so she had a prominent role in this movie as well. Yeah, a lot of raunch. If you've never gone back to watch the Kevin Smith movies, be prepared for a lot of raunch, but a lot of hilarity as well. And, excuse me, Marilyn's struggles, her real-life challenges as an actress and a makeup artist trying to make it in Hollywood after all these years, made for a really interesting conversation. She was very open and honest about the fact that Clerks didn't necessarily lead to a lot of bigger and better things, and she is just in the struggle like so many others who are still trying to make it in the entertainment world. Great chat with Marilyn. Molly Hagan, another face you will know. She's been on Seinfeld, she's been on Friends, she's kind of hit all the high notes of the 90s. She was a star of Herman's Head. She played the nice girl who lived inside Herman's head. And she's been in a bunch of movies from the 80s and 90s as well. So you definitely know her facially. What a cool lady. We've spoken several times for different magazines and things over the years. And talking to her, it's like catching up with a friend. So we'll hope to catch up with her again really soon as well. Tamalee Webb, Abs of Steel. She was one of the driving forces for a lot of people to get in shape. And she started an empire in the process. So an interesting talk about how she went from being kind of a budding star in the fitness world and how she grew this gigantic brand that is still well known and remembered today. So that was it for all the old stuff. And then we decided to start anew when we launched this project last year. And I was lucky enough to land as my first chat someone whom I've also spoken to many a time. One of my favorite, coolest people in the world. Mayim Bialik from Big Bang Theory. You may remember her from Blossom. Brilliant, hilarious, very punctual. I believe I've interviewed her 4 or 5 times now, and every single time she calls me about 10 minutes early and says, "Oh, I'm sorry for calling you early." But I think that's just, at this point, I have to imagine it's just her nature. It's not that she's trying to get rid of the commitment, she's just very, very punctual to the point that she ends up showing up to things early. Much appreciated, and I am always super cool to talk to. It was a great chat. She's an author. She's got so many things going on. She's involved, of course, in the science world as well. So definitely one to check out. And the list goes on. We've had a lot of great ones. More recently, we went back to one of my favorite shows, Home Improvement. Talked to Debbie Dunning, who was one of the Tool Time girls. And it's great to put a voice and personality and a history and a backstory to someone who maybe back then we were more busy concentrating on her face and her, just how wonderful she was as a Tool Time girl. But certainly she's got a lot more to offer, and she's been doing it lately by hosting her own show. Also talked to Alexandra Paul, another super cool lady, former star of Baywatch, who is now pretty much a full-time philanthropist and an activist, and she fights for the things she believes in, and we talked all about that. Very admirable woman. Jewel, she broke out, and her story of rags to riches captivated the music world and beyond, and she's still doing it. So it was great to talk to her. She's one of those people where you can't even talk to her without feeling some sort of inspiration. And it just goes on, and I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but thank you again so much for checking out all the shows you have. Please make sure that you join us to check out the ones that you haven't. Make sure you download them on your downtime, and we'll be back in just a couple of weeks with brand new episodes of Hollywood Happy Place. Thanks.